They laughed when she stumbled forward. They cheered when he spoke the words that would destroy her. And they turned their backs when she bled into the snow, cast out like garbage. But Naira Vale didn't die that night. Something far worse happened. She survived. And survival, when fueled by humiliation and rage, doesn't just heal wounds. It sharpens them into weapons. This is the story of an Omega who became the most dangerous alpha the territory ever feared. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. Now, let's begin where it all went wrong. The Grand Hall stank of wet fur and arrogance. Naira could smell it even before she crossed the threshold, that thick territorial reek that came from too many wolves packed into one space, all of them waiting for blood or spectacle. Preferably both. The stone walls were older than anyone could remember, carved with symbols that meant nothing to her, but everything to the pack. Torches burned in iron brackets, throwing shadows that danced like they were mocking her too. She walked alone down the center aisle, boots echoing on flagstone worn smooth by generations of paws and feet. Every head turned, every conversation died. The silence wasn't respectful. It was predatory. Naira kept her chin up, even though her hands were shaking inside the sleeves of her coat. She'd practiced this moment in her head 1,000 times. Imagined herself calm, graceful, maybe even proud. But reality was uglier. Her heart hammered so hard she thought her ribs might crack. Her wolf, usually so quiet it barely registered as present, was pacing inside her chest like it knew something she didn't. The hall was packed. Easily 300 wolves, maybe more. Warriors lined the walls, arms crossed, expressions ranging from bored to hostile. The elders sat in their designated section to the left, gray-haired and severe, whispering behind gnarled hands. Younger pack members clustered near the back, craning their necks to get a better view. Everyone wanted to see this. Everyone had heard the rumors. Naira Vale, the Kitchen Omega, had been summoned before the Alpha. No one knew why, but speculation had been running wild for days. Some said she'd committed some offense. Others whispered about debts, about family shame, about a dozen different scandals that had no basis in reality. Naira had heard them all, had felt the weight of their stares every time she walked through the compound, carrying trays of food or scrubbing floors or doing any of the dozen thankless tasks assigned to someone of her rank. Omega. The lowest, the weakest, the ones who existed to serve. She'd accepted it her whole life, had been born into it, raised in it, taught from childhood that this was her place, and she should be grateful for it. Her mother had been an Omega. Her grandmother, too. It was in her blood, in her bones, in the way her wolf barely had enough presence to shift properly. But 3 days ago, everything had changed. 3 days ago, she'd woken up with a mark burning on her collarbone. Small, crescent-shaped. The mark of a mate bond forming. She'd stared at it in the cracked mirror above her wash basin, heart racing, mind spinning. It wasn't possible. Omega wolves didn't get bonds like this. They got chosen by stronger wolves sometimes, claimed as partners if they were lucky, but the moon didn't gift them with fated mates. That was for warriors, for leaders, for wolves who mattered. But the mark was there, undeniable, burning. And then the summons had come. The Alpha requires your presence in the Grand Hall. Tomorrow night. Do not be late. Naira hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, had spent the entire day in a fog of terror and impossible hope. Because if she had a mate bond forming and the Alpha had summoned her, that meant no. She wouldn't let herself think it, wouldn't let herself hope for something so far beyond her reach it might as well have been on another planet. But here she was, walking down this aisle, and at the end of it, seated on a chair that wasn't quite a throne, but wanted to be, was Riven Kyle, Alpha of the Ironclaw pack. 28 years old, broad-shouldered, sharp-jawed, with eyes the color of storm clouds and a presence that made the air feel heavier. He wasn't looking at her. Not yet. He was listening to his beta, Corin, who leaned in close and whispered something that made Riven's mouth twitch. Not quite a smile, but close enough to make Naira's stomach drop. To his right sat Ilara Voss, beautiful, elegant, strong. Everything an Alpha's mate should be. She wore a dress that probably cost more than Naira's entire wardrobe, deep blue silk that caught the torchlight and made her look like something out of a painting. Her hair fell in perfect waves over one shoulder, dark and glossy. Her posture was impeccable. Spine straight, chin tilted at just the right angle to convey confidence, without arrogance. She looked at Naira the way someone might look at a stain on expensive fabric, briefly, with mild distaste, before deciding it wasn't worth the effort to clean. Naira stopped 10 feet from the dais. Protocol said she should kneel. She didn't. Couldn't. Her legs were shaking too badly. Naira Vale, Riven's voice rolled through the hall like distant thunder. He finally looked at her, and the weight of his gaze was almost physical. Deep gray eyes swept over her, assessing, calculating. Step forward. She did. 3 steps. No more. Her boots scraped on stone. Someone in the crowd coughed. The sound echoed. Closer. Her wolf snarled inside her chest. Not at him. At the situation. At the vulnerability of standing here, exposed while hundreds of eyes watched. Nira ignored it and took 2 more steps. Close enough now that she could see the faint scar on his jaw, the one he'd gotten in a border skirmish 2 winters ago. Close enough to smell cedar and smoke and something sharper underneath, anger, maybe, or disgust. The bond hit her like a freight train. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't the romantic, soul-deep recognition the old stories talked about. Those stories were lies, she realized in that instant. Lies told by people who'd never actually experienced this. Because what slammed into her chest, what wrapped around her ribs and squeezed, wasn't beautiful. It was violent. A snap of connection so sudden and absolute that Naira gasped, stumbling forward half a step before she caught herself. Her wolf roared to life, no longer quiet, no longer dormant. It surged against her ribs, clawing for freedom, howling one word over and over. Mate, mate, mate. The mark on her collarbone burned, actually burned, hot enough that she pressed a hand to it instinctively, felt the heat radiating through her shirt. No, this couldn't be. Riven stood, slowly. The movement was controlled, deliberate, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. She saw it. Saw the moment the bond snapped into place for him too, saw his jaw tighten, saw his hands flex at his sides. And then, just as fast, she saw the revulsion. No, he said. One word, flat, final. Naira's knees almost buckled. The bond was still there, blazing between them like a live wire, but it felt wrong now, twisted, like something beautiful that had been shattered before it ever had a chance to form. Alpha, she started, and hated how small her voice sounded, hated the way it cracked, hated that 300 wolves were hearing her break in real time. No, Riven said again, louder this time. He looked past her, addressing the pack. His voice carried, clear and authoritative, the voice of a leader who'd never questioned his right to command. The moon makes mistakes, rare, but not impossible. He gestured at her, dismissive, like she was a problem to be solved rather than a person. Is one of them. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not everyone. But enough. Enough that Nira felt her face go hot, felt shame crawl up her spine like something with claws. She recognized some of the voices. Cade, one of the younger warriors, who'd always treated her like furniture. Senna, who worked in the same kitchens and had never missed a chance to remind Naira of her place. Others she couldn't identify, didn't want to. You're an Omega, Riven continued, and the way he said it made it sound like a disease, like something contagious. Weak, unremarkable. You have no notable bloodline, no skills of value, no strength to offer this pack. You work in the kitchens. He said it like it was the worst insult he could think of. You can barely shift without losing control. Your wolf is damaged, stunted. And you expect this pack to accept you as Luna? I didn't ask for this. Her voice was stronger now. Anger was starting to burn through the shock, hot and bitter. I didn't choose. Neither did I. Riven descended the steps, closing the distance between them until he was close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He was tall, powerfully built. Standing this close, she could feel the dominance rolling off him in waves, the alpha presence that made weaker wolves want to bare their throats. The bond screamed at her to reach out, to touch him, to make him understand. She kept her hands locked at her sides. But I have a choice now, and I choose strength. I choose someone who can stand beside me, not behind me. Someone this pack can respect. He turned just enough to extend a hand toward Alara. She rose like she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. Graceful. Confident. Every inch the Luna this pack expected. She descended the steps with the kind of poise that came from years of training, years of knowing exactly who she was and what she was meant to be. She took his hand, and the smile she gave Naira was so cold it could have frozen blood. Riven looked back at Naira. The bond was still there, still pulling, still burning. She could see it affecting him too. The slight tension in his jaw, the way his free hand clenched and unclenched. He felt it. He just didn't care. I, Riven Kael, Alpha of Ironclaw, reject you, Naira Vale, as my mate. His voice echoed through the hall. Formal. Binding. The words of the old law, spoken with the full weight of his authority. I sever this bond before the pack and the moon. You are nothing to me. The bond didn't break cleanly. It tore. Naira screamed. She couldn't help it. It felt like something inside her chest was being ripped out by the roots, shredded, burned. Her wolf howled, a sound of such pure agony that several people in the crowd flinched. The bond, that bright thread of connection, didn't just snap. It unraveled violently, fraying and splitting and tearing through her until she thought she'd die from it. She collapsed to her knees, hands pressed to her sternum, gasping for air that wouldn't come. The mark on her collarbone felt like a brand, like molten metal poured directly onto her skin. She clawed at it, fingernails scraping, trying to make it stop. Make it stop. Pathetic. The word cut through her agony. She didn't know who said it. Didn't matter. Through the haze of pain, she heard Riven speak again, distant now, clinical. Remove her. Hands grabbed her arms. Rough. Impatient. She didn't know who they belonged to and didn't care. They dragged her backward, boots scraping on stone, and the hall spun around her in a blur of torchlight and faces. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked genuinely disturbed. Most looked satisfied. Corin's voice, low and almost pitying. Take her to the border. Make sure she understands she's not welcome back. The border. Not just expelled from the hall. Expelled from the pack. Banishment. Naira tried to fight. She did. Tried to dig her heels in, tried to wrench her arms free, but her body wasn't listening. The pain was too much, too all-consuming. Her wolf was thrashing, incoherent, broken. They hauled her through the doors, and the cold night air hit her like a slap. Snow was falling, light, delicate flakes that would have been beautiful under different circumstances. Now they just felt like mockery. They dragged her through the compound, past the training grounds where warriors stopped their drills to watch, past the outer cabins where families peered through windows, past the last markers that separated packland from the wild frontier beyond. And then they dropped her. Naira hit the ground hard, snow biting into her palms. She tried to push herself up, but her arms gave out. Everything hurt. Everything was wrong. The torn bond was still screaming inside her, ragged edges sawing against her ribs with every breath. Pathetic, one of her escorts muttered. She thought it might be Cade. Didn't have the strength to look up and check. Think she'll even make it through the night? Another voice. Female. Amused. Doubt it. Look at her. Can barely breathe. Shame. Heard she made decent bread. Laughter. Footsteps crunching away through the snow, growing fainter, and then she was alone. Alone in the dark, bleeding from wounds she couldn't see, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. The temperature was dropping fast. She could feel it, the way the cold seeped through her clothes, through her skin, settling into her bones. Another hour out here and she'd freeze to death. Maybe that would be better. Maybe... No. Something inside her, not her wolf, something deeper, stirred. It wasn't warm. It wasn't comforting. But it was angry. A small, hot coal of rage buried under all the pain and shock and humiliation. They'd thrown her away, laughed at her suffering, treated her like she was nothing. Fine. Let them think she was dead. Let them go back to their warm fires and their perfect alpha and forget she'd ever existed. She'd survive this, somehow. And one day they'd remember her name. Naira didn't know how long she lay there. Minutes, hours. Time stopped meaning much when every breath felt like knives in your lungs. But eventually, she moved. One hand, then the other, fingers digging into snow, finding frozen ground underneath. She dragged herself forward, inch by agonizing inch. The tree line was maybe 20 feet away. Might as well have been 20 miles. She made it 5 feet before she had to stop, gasping, vision swimming. Her wolf whimpered. Weak. Broken. No help at all. Get up, she told herself. Get up or die. Another 3 feet, then 2 more. Her hands were numb, couldn't feel her feet anymore. The trees, just a little farther. She reached them, finally, and collapsed against a trunk. Bark scraped her cheek. She didn't care. The forest was marginally warmer than the open field, blocked some of the wind at least. Not enough. Still going to freeze. But there was deadfall nearby. Broken branches. If she could just... Nira forced herself to move again, crawled to the nearest pile of fallen wood. Her hands wouldn't work properly, kept slipping, but she managed to gather an armful, dragged it back to a spot where the ground was relatively clear. Fire. She needed fire. Her pack, no, not her pack anymore, had always handled things like fire starting, shelter building, survival skills. She'd worked in the kitchens, used stoves that were already lit, never learned to make flame from nothing, but she'd watched, had seen the warriors practice, flint and steel, or friction. Or she didn't have flint, didn't have steel, didn't have anything except frozen hands and desperation. For 3 hours, Nira tried, rubbing sticks together until her palms blistered, striking rocks, begging, praying for just one spark. Nothing. She was going to die out here, not from the cold but from sheer incompetence. The irony was almost funny. And then something happened. She was holding 2 sticks, hands shaking so badly she could barely grip them, tears freezing on her cheeks. And she got angry. Not sad, not afraid, just purely, incandescently furious. At Riven, at the pack, at the moon for bonding her to someone who'd throw her away, at herself for being too weak to matter. Heat flared in her chest. Nira gasped, dropping the sticks. The heat spread outward, flowing down her arms, into her hands. Her palms started to glow, faintly at first, like she'd dipped them in phosphorescent paint. Then brighter. Silver light pulsed beneath her skin, tracing patterns she didn't recognize. The dropped sticks caught fire. Not from friction, not from sparks. They just ignited. Small flames licking along dry bark, growing, spreading. Nira stared at them, then at her hands. The glow was fading now, sinking back beneath her skin, but the warmth lingered. What the hell was that? She didn't have an answer, didn't have time to find one. The fire was real, whatever its source, and she needed to feed it before it died. She grabbed more wood, piled it on, nursed the flames until they were strong enough to push back the darkness. Then she collapsed next to it and didn't move for a very long time. The first week was the worst. Nira spent most of it in a haze of pain and fever. The bond's destruction had done something to her body, some kind of systemic shock that left her weak and disoriented. She'd found a small cave, more of an overhang, really, and made it her shelter. Built fires that she somehow, impossibly, started with her hands when desperation hit. She didn't understand it. Every time it happened, she felt that same heat, saw that same silver glow. Sometimes it was just enough to light tinder. Other times, when she was particularly terrified or angry, the light blazed bright enough to illuminate the entire cave. Magic. It had to be. But that was impossible. Wolves didn't have magic. They had strength, speed, healing, not whatever this was. Unless it wasn't wolf magic at all. The thought terrified her, but she pushed it aside. Survival first, existential questions later. Food was the immediate problem. Her pack, the Ironclaw pack, she corrected herself bitterly, had fed her. Kitchen scraps mostly, but regular, reliable. Out here there was nothing. She tried setting snares like she'd seen the hunters do, failed miserably. Tried fishing in a half-frozen stream, caught nothing. She ate snow to stay hydrated, chewed on bark when the hunger got unbearable. On day 4, she caught a squirrel with her bare hands through a combination of luck and the creature's own stupidity. She'd never killed anything before. Killing the squirrel was harder than she expected. It fought, scratched her arms bloody, made sounds that would haunt her. But hunger was stronger than guilt. She broke its neck with shaking hands, gutted it with a sharp rock, and cooked it over her impossible fire. It was the best thing she'd ever tasted. Nira cried while she ate it, couldn't help herself. Cried for the squirrel, for her ruined life, for the mate who'd looked at her with such disgust. Then she wiped her face and went looking for another one. Week 2 brought the first real snowstorm. Naira had thought she knew what winter was. The Ironclaw compound got cold, sure. But there were buildings, fireplaces, thick walls, and warm clothes. Out here, winter was a predator. The storm rolled in without warning, turning the world white and howling. Naira barely made it back to her cave before visibility dropped to nothing. She huddled as far back as she could, fed her fire constantly, and prayed the wind wouldn't blow snow in and extinguish it. It lasted 3 days. 3 days of unrelenting cold, of wind that screamed through the trees, of snow that piled up until the cave entrance was nearly blocked. 3 days of rationing her meager food supply and wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Maybe she should have stayed at the border, begged, accepted whatever scraps of mercy they might have shown. No, she'd made the right choice. If she'd stayed, if she'd groveled, she would have become something worse than dead. She would have become broken. Better to die out here with her dignity intact. The storm finally broke on the morning of the 4th day. Naira dug herself out through 3 feet of fresh snow and emerged into a world transformed. Everything was white, silent, beautiful, and deadly. She took stock. Her food was gone. Her fire had burned through most of the easily accessible deadwood. Her clothes were falling apart. But she was alive. That had to count for something. Month 1 taught her to hunt. Not well, but enough. She started small, more squirrels, a few birds stupid enough to get too close. She learned to move quietly, learned to read tracks in the snow, learned which animals were worth the effort and which would just lead her on exhausting chases through the forest. Her wolf, still damaged from the rejection, was unpredictable. Some days it refused to surface at all, left her fully human and vulnerable. Other days it took over without warning, half-formed and feral, leaving Naira to wake up miles from her cave with blood on her mouth and no memory of how it got there. But slowly, painfully, she learned to work with it instead of against it, learned to coax it forward when she needed the enhanced senses, learned to pull it back before it took complete control. They were broken, both of them, but they were learning to be broken together. And the power, the flare, she'd started calling it, for lack of a better term, grew stronger. It responded to emotion at first. Fear, anger, desperation. But Naira started experimenting, carefully, testing its limits. She'd focus on the warmth in her chest, imagine it flowing to her hands, and sometimes she could make it respond without needing to be terrified. A flicker of light, a pulse of warmth. Once, she held a sustained glow for almost a minute before exhaustion forced her to stop. She had no idea what it meant. No idea if it was permanent or if it would fade. But it was hers. Something the pack hadn't given her, something Riven couldn't take away. She practiced in secret, alone, pushing herself until she collapsed. Because deep down, she knew. This power, whatever it was, might be the only thing that kept her alive. And if she was going to survive, if she was going to do more than just survive, she needed to master it. Month 3 brought a visitor. Naira was checking a snare line when she caught the scent. Wolf. Male. Moving fast, heading straight for her territory. Her territory. When had she started thinking of it that way? She ghosted back to her cave, grabbed her makeshift spear, just a straight branch with one end sharpened and fire-hardened, and positioned herself where she had a clear line of sight. The wolf emerged from the trees 10 minutes later. Big. Gray fur, scarred muzzle. He shifted as he approached, bones cracking and reforming, until a man stood where the wolf had been. He was older than her. Mid-30s, maybe. Rough-looking, with a jagged scar running from his temple to his jaw. He raised both hands, showing they were empty. "Easy," he said. His voice was raspy, like he didn't use it often. Not looking for trouble, then turn around and leave. Naira kept her spear leveled at his chest. Her heart was pounding, but she kept her hand steady. He smiled. It wasn't a friendly expression. "Heard there was someone living out here. Didn't believe it at first. The frontier's not kind to lone wolves. I'm managing. I can see that." His eyes swept over her cave, her fire pit, the rabbit carcasses hanging from a tree branch. "Your Ironclaw, I can smell it. Or you were." Naira's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" Just passing through. Saw your smoke, thought I'd check. Not often you find someone surviving out here solo, especially not. He paused, seemed to reconsider his words. Someone like you. Someone like me, Naira repeated flatly. Omega, he said. Not cruel, just stating a fact. Can smell that too. No offense, but your kind doesn't usually last long beyond pack borders. I'm not my kind anymore. Something flickered in his eyes. Interest, maybe? Or respect? No, I guess you're not. He lowered his hand slowly. Name's Garrick. I run with a group of rogues about 20 miles north. We're not a pack exactly, just wolves who don't fit anywhere else. Good for you. You're welcome to join us. Safety in numbers. Better than freezing to death alone. Nira almost laughed. I'm not interested in joining another pack. We're not a pack, Garrick said again. No hierarchy, no alpha, just survival. Still not interested. He studied her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. Suit yourself. But winter's only going to get worse. If you change your mind, he gestured vaguely north. Follow the river. You'll find us eventually. He shifted back to wolf form and loped off into the trees without another word. Nira stood there for a long time after he left, spear still raised, heart still racing. She didn't join the rogues, didn't even consider it seriously. But knowing they were out there, knowing she wasn't completely alone in the wilderness, made the nights a little less suffocating. Month 6 changed everything. Naira had settled into a routine by then. Wake before dawn, check traps, hunt if the traps were empty. Practice with the flare in the afternoons, pushing herself to maintain control for longer periods. Sleep light, always ready to run. It was a harsh existence, brutal, but it was hers. And then one morning she woke up to find her hands glowing, not because she'd summoned the power, not because she was afraid or angry, they were just glowing, steady silver light pulsing beneath her skin, tracing those strange patterns she still didn't understand. Nira sat up slowly, staring at her palms. The glow didn't fade. If anything, it intensified as she focused on it. She stood, walked to the mouth of the cave. The light grew brighter. Without quite meaning to, she raised one hand and pushed. Energy exploded outward in a visible wave, slamming into a tree 30 feet away. The trunk cracked, splintered. The entire tree shuddered, shedding snow in a cascade. Naira stood frozen, hand still raised, breathing hard. She'd done that. Not by accident, not through desperation. She'd meant to, and it had worked. The power wasn't just reactive anymore. It was responsive, controlled. She spent the next 6 hours testing it, found she could shape the energy into barriers, into pulses, into focused strikes. Found that the more she used it, the easier it became. The patterns on her skin grew clearer, forming symbols she almost recognized but couldn't quite place. By sunset, she was exhausted, drained in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion. But she was also exhilarated, because whatever this power was, wherever it came from, it was strong. Stronger than any wolf she'd ever met. Strong enough, maybe, to keep her alive out here indefinitely. Strong enough, maybe, to do more than just survive. That night, curled up next to her fire, Nira let herself think about Riven for the first time in months. Let herself remember his face, his voice, the way he'd looked at her like she was garbage. You are nothing to me. She smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Not yet, she thought. But one day. One day she'd make him regret those words. One day she'd stand before him again. And this time, she'd be the one with all the power. Year 1 in the wilderness didn't make Naira stronger. It made her mean. There was a difference, she learned. Strength was what the pack valued. Raw muscle, speed, the ability to dominate in a straight fight. But meanness was something else entirely. It was the willingness to fight dirty, to use every advantage no matter how small, to survive by any method necessary, even when survival looked impossible. The frontier taught her that lesson over and over until it carved itself into her bones. By month 8, she'd killed her first rogue wolf. He'd wandered into her territory, and yes, she thought of it as hers now, a roughly 5-mile radius around her cave that she'd marked and defended. He was bigger than her, stronger, an experienced fighter with scars that told stories of dozens of victories. Nira won anyway. Not because she outmatched him physically. She didn't. But she'd been living in these woods for months while he was just passing through. She knew which rocks were loose, which branches would break under weight, where the ground dropped away into hidden ravines. She led him on a chase through terrain she'd memorized. Let him think he was gaining. Then she stopped at the edge of a cliff he couldn't see in the darkness, braced herself, and when he lunged, she sidestepped. He went over, 30 feet straight down into rocks and freezing water. She didn't go down to check if he was dead, didn't need to. The sounds told her everything. Afterwards, sitting by her fire with his blood still on her hands, Nira realized she didn't feel guilty, didn't feel much of anything except a grim satisfaction that she'd survived another day. The girl who'd worked in the Ironclaw kitchens would have been horrified. That girl was dead. The power grew in tandem with her ruthlessness. By month 9, she could summon the flare at will, hold it for minutes instead of seconds. The silver light no longer just pulsed under her skin. She could shape it, direct it, weaponize it. She practiced obsessively, firing pulses of energy at targets until her aim was perfect, creating shields that could stop thrown rocks, then arrows she crafted herself, then eventually her own strikes when she tested the barrier's limits. Pushing, always pushing, to see how far the power would go. It never seemed to run out, just left her exhausted, wrung dry in a way that sleep barely fixed. But exhaustion was better than death. Winter hit hard that year, harder than the storm that had nearly killed her in week 2. Temperatures dropped so low that metal would freeze to skin, so cold that breathing hurt. Nira's cave became a prison. Venturing out meant risking frostbite in minutes. She survived on stored food and stubbornness, burned through her wood supply too fast, spent days huddled next to a fire she had to feed constantly, using the flare to ignite new fuel when her kindling ran out. On the worst night, when the temperature dropped so far that ice formed on the cave walls despite the fire, Nira wrapped herself in every scrap of fur and fabric she owned and still shook so violently she thought her teeth would crack. She was going to die. Finally, after everything, after all the fighting and surviving and refusing to quit, winter would kill her in her sleep. The flare erupted without her conscious command. Silver light blazed outward from her body, so bright it hurt to look at. Heat came with it, not the focused heat of her fire-starting, but radiant warmth that filled the entire cave. The ice on the walls melted. Steam hissed. Nira gasped, uncurling from her huddle, feeling warmth sink into her frozen limbs. The light burned for hours. All night, maybe. She lost track of time. When it finally faded with the dawn, Nira collapsed into the deepest sleep she'd had in months. She woke 12 hours later, weak as a newborn, but alive. The power had saved her. Not because she'd controlled it, but because it had responded to her need without being asked. That changed things. If the flare was tied to her survival instinct, if it would activate to protect her even when she was unconscious, that meant it wasn't just a tool. It was part of her. Integrated so deeply that her body treated it like any other vital function. Nira sat up slowly, staring at her hands. The patterns were still there, faint silver lines just under the skin. Permanent now. Always present even when the power wasn't active. She'd changed, fundamentally. Whatever she was now, it wasn't just an Omega Wolf anymore. Maybe it never had been. Spring arrived like a promise she didn't trust. The snow melted in uneven patches, revealing ground that had been frozen for months. Streams thawed. Animals emerged from hibernation. Life returned to the forest in a slow, cautious wave. Nira emerged from her cave and took stock. She'd survived her first full winter in the wilderness. That put her in maybe the top 1% of lone wolves who attempted it. Most died in the first month. The rest usually didn't make it past the first serious storm. But survival wasn't enough anymore. Surviving meant staying hidden, staying small, living in constant fear of the next disaster. She was done with that. It was time to get stronger. She started by expanding her territory. Not aggressively, she wasn't ready for that kind of attention, but methodically. She'd venture out in widening circles, mapping the terrain, identifying resources, checking for other wolves. There were more rogues than she'd expected. Not packs, but individuals or small groups scratching out livings in the spaces between pack territories. Most avoided her once they caught her scent. The few who didn't learned quickly that her territory was defended. Word spread. By summer, rogues in the region knew her by reputation, if not by name. The Cave Wolf. The one with the silver light. The Omega who shouldn't have survived but did. They gave her a wide berth. Good. She wasn't looking for friends. But in late summer, one of them didn't run. Nira was fishing in a stream. She'd gotten better at it, finally figured out the patience and timing required, when she caught an unfamiliar scent. Female wolf, young, moving quickly through the underbrush like something was chasing her. Nira grabbed her spear and moved to intercept. The girl burst through the trees at a full sprint, human form bleeding from a gash on her shoulder. She skidded to a stop when she saw Nira, eyes going wide. "Please," she gasped. "Please, they're coming. I didn't mean to—" Voices behind her, male, angry. 3 wolves emerged from the forest, all of them bigger than the girl, all of them moving with the coordinated precision of a hunting pack. They stopped when they saw Nira, sized her up with predatory calculation. The one in front was tall, scarred, with eyes that reminded her uncomfortably of Riven. "That one's ours," he said, jerking his chin at the bleeding girl. "Stole from us. We're just collecting what's owed." Nira looked at the girl. She was young, maybe 17, 18 at most, terrified, clutching her wounded shoulder like she could hold the blood inside through pressure alone. "What did she steal?" Nira asked. "Food. Medicine. Doesn't matter. She took from us. She pays." The girl shook her head frantically. "I was starving. They had so much, I just—" "Shut up," the scarred wolf snapped. His gaze returned to Nira. "We don't want trouble with you. Heard you're the cave wolf. Respect what you've done, surviving out here solo. But this doesn't concern you." He was right. It didn't concern her. The smart play was to step aside, let them take the girl, go back to her fishing. Nira looked at the girl again. Saw herself 8 months ago, broken, bleeding, abandoned. "No," she said. The scarred wolf's expression darkened. "What?" "She's in my territory now. That makes her my concern." "Your territory?" He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "You don't have a pack. You're a lone wolf playing at boundaries. Try crossing them and find out." Tension crackled. The 3 wolves shifted position subtly, flanking out like they were preparing for a fight. The girl pressed closer to Nira, whimpering. The scarred wolf studied Nira for a long moment. She could see him weighing options, calculating odds. 3 against 1. He had numbers, strength, experience, probably, but he'd also heard the stories. "Not worth it," he finally muttered. To the girl, "Keep running. Next time we catch you, and we will, you won't find anyone to hide behind." They melted back into the forest. Nira waited until their scent faded completely before lowering her spear. The girl sagged, relief written all over her face. "Thank you," she breathed. "Thank you, I didn't think—" "What's your name?" Nira cut her off. "Mira." "Why are you alone, Mira?" The girl's expression shuddered. "My pack, they died. Sickness, 2 months ago. I've been trying to survive on my own since." Nira recognized the lie immediately. Not about the pack dying, maybe, but about the circumstances. There was something else there, something the girl didn't want to talk about. "Fine." Nira had secrets too. "Can you hunt?" she asked. Mira shook her head. "Fight?" Another head shake. "What can you do?" I can sew, mend clothes, and I know about plants, healing herbs, poisons, which ones are safe to eat." Useful skills. More useful than Nira had expected. She made a decision she'd probably regret. "You can stay. 1 week. I'll teach you enough to survive on your own. After that, you leave. Understood?" Mira's face lit up. Yes, understood. Thank you. I'll—" "Save it, and let me see that shoulder." The wound was deep but clean. Nira washed it in the stream, packed it with moss she knew had antibiotic properties, and bound it with strips torn from her own shirt. Mira hissed through her teeth but didn't pull away. "You're good at this," she said. "Practice." Nira tied off the bandage. "You learn fast out here or you die." "Is it true? What they say about you?" "Depends what they say. That you have some kind of power, that you glow in the dark, that you killed a wolf twice your size without shifting." Nira stood, gathering her fishing gear. "Some of it's true. Some of it's exaggeration. Doesn't matter either way." But Mira was looking at her with something like awe, and Nira realized with a start that this was what respect looked like. She'd never seen it directed at her before. 1 week turned into 2, then 3. Mira proved useful despite her lack of combat skills. She identified plants Naira had been avoiding as perfectly edible, showed her how to process certain roots to make them less bitter, taught her which leaves could treat infection and which could induce vomiting if you needed to purge poison. In return, Naira taught her to set traps, to move quietly, to read tracks and weather patterns. Taught her the brutal calculus of frontier survival: when to fight, when to run, when to hide. They didn't talk much beyond practical matters. Naira didn't ask about Mira's past, and Mira didn't push about the power she'd glimpsed once when Naira thought she was asleep, and practiced with the flare in the darkness outside the cave. It worked. An unspoken agreement. 2 lone wolves helping each other survive, nothing more. But on week 4, everything changed. They were checking trap lines when Mira suddenly went rigid, nostrils flaring. "What?" Naira asked, already reaching for her spear. "Smoke. A lot of it. East." Naira caught the scent a second later. Not campfire smoke. Something bigger, sharper. They ran. The settlement was half a mile away, tucked into a valley Naira had avoided because it was too close to pack territories. Maybe 15 structures, mostly rough cabins, home to rogues and outcasts who'd banded together for safety. It was burning. Flames consumed 3 buildings already. Wolves ran in panicked circles, trying to organize, trying to fight the fire with buckets of water that evaporated before they hit the flames. Children screamed. Smoke billowed thick and black. Naira and Mira stopped at the tree line, watching. "We should help," Mira said. "Not our problem. People are dying. People die every day out here." Mira turned to look at her. "You saved me." That was different. How? Naira didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had several, none of which sounded good when said out loud. Saving one girl had been a calculated risk. Saving an entire settlement was suicide. A woman stumbled out of one of the burning buildings, clothes smoking, a child clutched to her chest. She made it 3 steps before collapsing. Mira moved. "Don't," Naira started, but it was too late. The girl sprinted into the chaos, heading straight for the collapsed woman. Naira cursed viciously and followed. The heat was immense, suffocating. Naira's eyes watered, her lungs burned. Mira reached the woman first, grabbed the child, started dragging them both away from the flames. A beam cracked overhead. Naira saw it fall. Saw Mira look up, eyes widening. Saw the moment the girl realized she couldn't move fast enough. The flare exploded outward. Silver light blazed from Naira's hands, forming a shield above Mira and the woman and child. The beam hit it and stopped, suspended in midair by pure energy. Sparks showered down around the edges. Naira held it, muscles screaming, power thrumming through her like lightning. "Move!" she roared. Mira moved, dragged the woman and child clear. The moment they were safe, Naira released the shield. The beam crashed down, throwing embers in every direction. Naira stood in the middle of the settlement, hands still glowing, breathing hard. Every wolf within sight had stopped what they were doing. They stared at her, at the light, at the impossible thing she'd just done. "Wells!" someone shouted. "Get water from the wells!" The spell broke. People scrambled back into motion. But Naira could feel their eyes on her, could hear the whispers starting. She helped anyway. Spent the next 2 hours creating barriers to contain the fire's spread, using pulses of energy to knock down burning structures before they could ignite their neighbors, holding shields over rescue teams who ventured into the worst of the flames. By the time they got it under control, she was so exhausted she could barely stand. The settlement's leader found her sitting on a stump, head between her knees, trying not to pass out. He was old, grizzled, missing half an ear. "You're the cave wolf," he said. Not a question. Naira didn't bother looking up. "Yeah. Heard stories. Didn't believe half of them. Guess I was wrong." "Guess so." He was quiet for a moment, then, "We owe you. All of us. That fire would have taken the whole settlement if you hadn't—" "I don't want gratitude." "What do you want?" Naira finally raised her head, met his eyes. "Information about the packs, territory boundaries, politics, who's allied with who. Everything you know." The old wolf studied her. "Planning something?" "Maybe. Ironclaw's territory is a week's travel west. Heard you came from there. Heard you were banished. Word traveled fast, apparently. And if you're thinking about going back, you should know Riven Kael's consolidated power since you left. Absorbed 2 smaller packs, extended his borders. He's one of the strongest alphas in the region now. Good, Naira thought. The higher he climbed, the farther he'd fall. I'll take whatever information you can give me, she said. Maps, if you have them. Names, weaknesses. The old wolf nodded slowly. Come by tomorrow. I'll have what you need. He walked away and Mira appeared to take his place. The girl's face was smudged with soot, her hastily bandaged shoulder bleeding through again, but she was grinning. That was incredible, she said. The way you the light and the shield and… Don't, Nira cut her off. Don't make it more than it was. But it was more. You saved them. You saved all of them. I made a mistake, drew attention. Now everyone here knows what I can do. Is that so bad? Nira looked at her. Really looked at her. Saw the hero worship written all over the girl's face and felt something twist in her chest. Yes, she said quietly. Because now they'll expect things. And expectations get you killed out here. But it was already too late. By the next morning, word had spread beyond the settlement. By the end of the week, rogues were seeking her out. Some wanted protection. Some wanted to join her, whatever that meant. Some just wanted to see if the stories were true. Nira turned them all away, all except 3. They showed up together, 2 males and a female, all young, all scarred by hard living. The female spoke for the group. We heard what you did at Crossroads settlement, she said. Her name was Kira, sharp-featured and sharp-voiced. We want to learn. Learn what? Nira asked. How to survive. How to fight back. How to be like you. You don't want to be like me. Yes, Kira said flatly. We do. We're tired of running, tired of scraping by, tired of being prey. The 2 males, brothers, they said, named Jace and Finn, nodded agreement. Naira looked at them, saw herself in their desperation, their anger. She made another decision she'd probably regret. 3 months, she said. I'll teach you what I can. After that, you're on your own. They agreed instantly. Training them was harder than training Mira. They had bad habits, ingrained responses that worked against them. Naira broke them down and built them back up, the way the wilderness had done to her. She taught them to hunt, to fight dirty, to use terrain as a weapon. Taught them to push past pain and exhaustion because stopping meant dying. Taught them that honor was a luxury none of them could afford. And slowly, carefully, she taught them about the flare. Not how to use it. She still didn't understand it well enough herself. But she showed them what it could do. Let them see her create shields, fire pulses of energy, manipulate light into shapes and barriers. Where does it come from? Jace asked one night. I don't know, Naira admitted. It just appeared, after my rejection. She'd never spoken about it before. Never said the words out loud. But something about sitting around the fire with these 4, Mira, Kira, Jace, Finn, made it easier. The bond breaking did something, she continued. Changed something inside me. Unlocked this. Is it wolf magic? Finn asked. No, it's something else. Something older, I think. Kira leaned forward, eyes intense. Can you teach us? I don't know how. I barely know how it works myself. But you control it now. Mostly. It still gets away from me sometimes when I'm emotional. Show us, Kira pressed. Not how to use it. Just show us what it looks like when you really let go. Nira hesitated. Then she stood, walked to the clearing's edge, and let the flare rise. It came easily now. Silver light bloomed across her skin, tracing those strange symbols, spreading up her arms and across her shoulders. She raised both hands and pushed. Energy exploded outward in a shockwave that flattened grass, knocked leaves from trees, sent ripples through the air itself. She shaped it, pulling it back, compressing it into a sphere between her palms. The sphere brightened, pulsed, then shattered into a dozen smaller lights that danced through the clearing like fireflies before winking out. When she turned back, all 4 of them were staring. That, Kira breathed, is what's going to change everything. She was right. Over the next year, Naira's reputation grew from whisper to legend. The cave wolf became the silver wolf. Stories spread, some true, most exaggerated. She'd killed a bear with her bare hands. She could control fire. She'd brought down a whole pack single-handedly. None of it was accurate. But she didn't correct the stories. Fear was a weapon. Let them be afraid. Her group expanded, not into a pack, she refused that designation, but into something else. A coalition of rogues and outcasts who'd sworn no formal allegiance but answered when she called. Mira, Kira, Jace, and Finn. Others who came and went, learning what they needed before moving on. They controlled a significant portion of the frontier now, not through conquest but through reputation. Other rogues knew you could pass through their territory safely if you followed the rules. No raiding settlements, no preying on the weak, no unnecessary violence. Break the rules, and the Silver Wolf would find you. It wasn't mercy, it was strategy. Naira was building something, piece by careful piece. A power base that existed outside pack structures, outside traditional hierarchies. And with every passing month, she got stronger. The flare no longer exhausted her the way it once had. She could maintain shields for hours, could fire dozens of energy pulses without breaking a sweat, could sense other wolves from hundreds of yards away through some mechanism she didn't fully understand. The symbols on her skin had spread. They covered her arms now, her shoulders, traced delicate patterns across her collarbones. They glowed whenever the power was active, but even dormant they were visible, faint silver lines that marked her as something other. 2 years after her banishment, Naira stood at the edge of her territory and looked west, toward Ironclaw. "You're thinking about it again," Mira said from behind her. Naira didn't turn. "Yeah." "Are you ready?" Was she? 2 years of survival, of training, of growing this power she still didn't fully understand. 2 years of building strength and reputation and a network of wolves who'd follow her into fire if she asked. Was it enough to face Riven Kyle? "No," she said honestly, "but I'm getting there." "What are you waiting for?" "The right moment. Going back now would be revenge. I want more than that." "What more is there?" Naira smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Everything." She turned away from the western horizon. There was still work to do, still training to complete, still pieces to position. But soon she'd return to the place that had thrown her away. And when she did, they'd learn exactly how badly they'd miscalculated. The message arrived 3 months later. A lone wolf appeared at the edge of her territory, bearing a sealed letter. He handed it over without comment and left immediately. Naira broke the seal, read the contents, read them again. Kira appeared at her shoulder. "What is it?" "An invitation." Naira's voice was flat. "To a gathering. All the regional alphas meeting to discuss territory disputes and trade agreements. You're not an alpha." "No, but apparently word of what I've built out here has reached them. They want to assess the situation. It's a trap." "Probably." Naira folded the letter carefully. "I'm going anyway." "That's insane." "Maybe, but it's also an opportunity. A chance to see them all together, to understand the power structures, to let them see what I've become." Kira grabbed her arm. "Naira, if you walk into a room full of alphas, I know the risks." "Do you? Because it sounds like you're planning to march into a den of wolves who see you as a threat and announce your presence." Naira pulled free gently. "That's exactly what I'm planning to do." The gathering was held in neutral territory, a massive stone hall that predated any current pack. Naira arrived at sunset, alone despite Kira's protests. Guards checked her for weapons at the door, found nothing. She'd left her spear behind. They didn't know the real weapon was burned into her skin. Inside, the hall was full of power and tension. 8 alphas, each representing a different pack, seated at a round table. Their betas and advisors stood against the walls. Every eye turned when Naira entered, and there, at the far side of the table, was Riven Kyle. He looked the same. Maybe a little older, a few new scars, but fundamentally unchanged. Still radiating that overwhelming alpha presence, still looking at the world like he owned it. His eyes met hers across the room. Something flickered in them, recognition, shock, calculation. "Naira Vale," said an older alpha she didn't recognize. "The Silver Wolf of the frontier. We're surprised you accepted the invitation." "I was surprised to receive it," Naira said. Her voice carried through the hall, steady and strong. "Since I'm not an alpha, No, the old alpha agreed, but you control more territory than some who are, and your interference in regional affairs has not gone unnoticed. Interference? Interesting word for keeping rogues from raiding your settlements. You've built a power structure outside pack law, another alpha said. Female, cold-eyed. That makes you a wild card. We don't like wild cards. Then you shouldn't have created the conditions that made me necessary. Riven spoke for the first time. You shouldn't be here at all. You're banished. Stepping into pack territory violates... This is neutral ground, Nira cut him off. Met his eyes directly. Felt the ghost of the bond, still there, still broken, still aching. I have as much right to be here as you. The tension in the room crystallized. Several alphas leaned forward, sensing conflict. You have no rights, Riven said. His voice was hard. You were rejected, cast out. Whatever you've built in the wilderness doesn't change that. You're right, Nira said, and smiled. It doesn't change what happened. It changes what happens next. She raised one hand, let the flare ignite. Silver light blazed across her skin, bright enough to make several wolves flinch. I came here because you asked, because I wanted you all to see what you created when you threw away the wolves you deemed worthless. I'm not asking for acceptance. I'm not asking for anything. The light intensified, patterns glowing across her arms. I'm telling you the frontier isn't lawless anymore. It has rules, it has protection, and if any of you have a problem with that... The light exploded outward in a perfect sphere, stopping inches from the nearest alpha's face before pulling back. You're welcome to try and do something about it. Silence. Absolute. Shocked. Then Riven stood. Get out. Gladly. Nira turned toward the door. Stopped. Looked back at him. Oh, and congratulations. Heard your mate had a child. A son, right? Something dangerous flashed in Riven's eyes. Stay away from my family. I'm not interested in your family. Nira's smile widened. I'm interested in watching everything you built collapse when you finally understand what you threw away. She walked out before he could respond. Outside, her hands were shaking. She'd just declared war. Not explicitly, but every alpha in that room had understood the message. She was coming for them, and there was nothing they could do to stop her. Nira made it 50 yards from the hall before the first attack came. She'd expected it. Honestly, would have been disappointed if they'd let her walk away clean. What she hadn't expected was for it to come so fast, or with such poor execution. The wolf lunged from the shadows between two buildings, young, male, reeking of Ironclaw. He was fast, but telegraphed the move so obviously Nira had already sidestepped before his claws reached where she'd been standing. She didn't use the flare. Didn't need to. Just pivoted, drove her elbow into his throat as he passed, and watched him crash into the dirt, choking. Tell Riven he needs better assassins, she said, and kept walking. Two more came at her before she reached the tree line. One she dropped with a kick to the knee that shattered bone. The other got close enough to rake claws across her shoulder before she grabbed his wrist, twisted until something popped, and threw him into his companion. The flare wanted to rise. She could feel it surging beneath her skin, eager, hungry. She forced it down. This wasn't the time. Not yet. By the time she crossed into the forest, she was bleeding from 3 different wounds and grinning like a lunatic. Let them come. Let them all come. She'd fought her way out of worse. Kira was waiting at the rendezvous point with Jace and Finn, all 3 armed and visibly agitated. You're bleeding, Kira said flatly. I'm fine. You declared war on 8 packs. 7. I don't think the Riverside Alpha gave a damn either way. This isn't funny, Nira. No, Nira agreed, letting the grin fade. It's not, but it's done. They know what I am now, what I can do, and they're scared. Scared things are dangerous. Good. So am I. They made it back to their territory by dawn. Nira slept for 4 hours, woke up to find the wounds already healing, faster than they should have, faster than any normal wolf. The flare's influence, maybe. Or something else she didn't understand yet. Mira brought her water and dried meat. Kira's calling a meeting. Everyone wants to know what happened. Everyone turned out to be 23 wolves. When had her group gotten that large? Nira stood before them in the clearing they used for gatherings and recounted the confrontation. No embellishment needed. The truth was dramatic enough. So what now? Asked a scarred rogue named Torv. They'll come for us. All of them together. Maybe, Nira said. Or maybe they'll fracture. 8 alphas with 8 different priorities. Getting them to coordinate is harder than you think. You're betting our lives on maybe, Kira pointed out. I'm betting our lives on being too dangerous to attack. We've held this territory for 2 years, defended it against dozens of incursions. They know taking us means casualties, and none of them want to be the pack that bleeds itself dry fighting rogues while their neighbors get stronger. That logic only holds if we stay defensive, Jay said. You just went on offense. Nira nodded. Yeah, I did, because defensive wasn't going to get us where we need to go. And where's that? Mira asked quietly. Nira looked at her, at all of them. Recognition, not as rogues scraping by, but as a legitimate power. The packs treat us like vermin because we let them. That changes now. How? Finn demanded. We take territory. Real territory, not just wilderness. We start making alliances. We become something they can't ignore or dismiss. You're talking about becoming a pack, Torv said. No, I'm talking about becoming something better. The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to scatter, disappear into the deep frontier before retaliation came. Others wanted to fortify their current position and wait it out. A few, Kira among them, wanted to strike first, hit the packs while they were still organizing. Nira listened to all of it, then made the call. We expand east. There's unclaimed territory between Stonefang and Riverdale packs. They've been fighting over it for years, neither side willing to commit the resources to hold it. We take it, we hold it, and we make it clear we're not giving it back. That's insane, someone muttered. Probably, Nira agreed. But it's also the only move they won't expect. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was close enough. They moved at first light. The territory in question was a valley, fertile, well-watered, strategically positioned. Both Stonefang and Riverdale had outposts at opposite ends, each monitoring the other, neither willing to escalate. Nira's group hit the Stonefang outpost first. 5 warriors, comfortable and complacent. They barely had time to register the attack before it was over. Nira gave them a choice: leave or die. They chose to leave. The Riverdale outpost was harder. 7 warriors, one of them a beta. They chose to fight. Nira let the flare loose. Silver light exploded through the outpost, shattering windows, sending wolves scrambling. She didn't kill anyone, didn't need to, just made it very clear that staying meant facing something they couldn't beat. The beta held out longest, stood his ground even as his pack scattered, growling defiance through bloody teeth. I know you, he said. Ironclaw's rejected, Omega. You think this makes you strong? You're just a freak with a parlor trick. Nira created a blade of pure energy in her palm, held it to his throat. Parlor trick, she repeated. Tell your alpha the valley's ours now. He wants it back, he can come take it. The beta spat at her feet. Then he ran. By sunset, Nira's group controlled the entire valley. By midnight, they'd begun fortifying positions. By dawn, scouts reported movement from both Stonefang and Riverdale. They're coming, Kira said. Both of them. Maybe 200 wolves total. Nira stood at the valley's highest point, looking down at her people. 23 wolves against 200. Impossible odds. Unless you changed the game. Send runners to every rogue camp within 3 days' travel, she said. Tell them we're holding this valley against pack incursion. Tell them if they want to stop living on scraps and fear, now's the time to prove it. They won't come, Torv said. Some will. Enough. She was right. Over the next 2 days, rogues trickled in. Not hundreds, she wasn't that optimistic, but enough. By the time Stonefang and Riverdale arrived, Nira had 68 wolves at her back, still outnumbered 3-1. The Stonefang Alpha was a massive brute named Gareth, all muscle and rage. The Riverdale Alpha was smaller but meaner, a woman called Saren with eyes like chips of ice. They approached under a temporary truce flag, just the 2 of them, stopping 50 yards from Nira's position. You have 1 chance to leave, Gareth bellowed. Abandon the valley, and we'll let you slink back to whatever hole you crawled from. Generous, Nira called back. I have a counter-offer. You both leave, acknowledge our claim, and I don't kill every wolf you brought with you. Saren laughed. You're outnumbered and outmatched. Whatever trick you pulled at the gathering won't save you here. No? Nira let the flare ignite, bright enough that wolves on both sides shielded their eyes. "Want to test that?" "You can't fight all of us," Gareth said. "No, but I can fight you." She leaped down from her vantage point, landing in the space between the two armies. The flare blazed brighter, spreading across her skin in those intricate patterns, turning her into a beacon of silver light. "Single combat," she said. "Both of you against me. I win. The valley's ours, and you leave. You win." She smiled. "You won't." "This is stupid," Saren said, but Naira could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Probably. But it's also your only chance to take me down without losing half your packs in the process. Because make no mistake, if this turns into a full battle, I will make you bleed for every inch." Gareth and Saren exchanged a look. Some silent communication passed between them. Then Gareth shifted, bones cracking and reforming, until a massive wolf stood where the man had been. Saren followed suit. Smaller, faster, built for precision rather than power. Two alphas in full wolf form against one omega who shouldn't have survived her first winter alone. The fight was brutal. Gareth came in first, relying on strength and mass. Nira met him with a shield that cracked under the impact, but held. She rolled aside as Saren lunged for her exposed flank, came up firing pulses of energy that forced both wolves to scatter. They were fast, experienced, everything she wasn't. But she had the flair. Gareth charged again. This time Naira didn't block. She channeled energy into her legs and jumped, clearing his massive body by inches, landing behind him and slamming a pulse into his hindquarters that sent him sprawling. Saren was already there, jaws aiming for Naira's throat. Naira created a blade and swung, caught the wolf across the muzzle, drawing blood. Saren yelped and retreated. They circled her now, cautious, coordinating. This was it, the moment where numbers and experience would overwhelm power. Nira planted her feet and let the flare explode. Not in a focused attack, in every direction at once. A sphere of pure energy that expanded outward in a shockwave, hitting both alphas simultaneously, sending them tumbling backward through the dirt. She didn't let up. Advanced on Gareth, firing pulse after pulse, until he was pinned against a boulder, too dazed to dodge. Shifted her attention to Saren, created a cage of light around the smaller wolf, constricting it. "Yield," Nira said. Her voice didn't sound like her own anymore. Too much power flowing through her, distorting everything. "Yield, or I'll kill you both." Saren shifted back to human form inside the cage, blood running from her nose. "You can't hold this forever." "No, but I can hold it long enough." Gareth shifted too, slumped against the boulder. "This valley isn't worth dying for." "Then leave." They did. Both alphas called their packs to retreat, limping away under the weight of defeat. Naira held the flare until they were out of sight, then released it all at once. She collapsed immediately. Woke up 3 hours later in her own shelter with Mira hovering anxiously. "You did it," the girl breathed. "You actually did it." "Did what?" Naira's voice was hoarse. "Beat two alphas in single combat. Claim the valley. Word's already spreading. Rogues are calling it the Battle of Silver Valley. They're saying you're the first rogue to take pack territory in over a century." Nira closed her eyes. "Great. Now I'm a bigger target." But she was smiling. The valley changed everything. Over the next month, more rogues came. Not to fight, but to join. To be part of something that had actually won against the packs. Naira's group swelled to over 100 wolves. She didn't call them a pack. Didn't establish formal hierarchy, but she trained them, organized them, gave them structure and purpose. And the packs noticed. Delegations arrived. Some hostile, some curious. The Riverside Alpha wanted an alliance. The Stonefang Alpha wanted revenge, but was too smart to act on it. Others just wanted to understand what she'd built and whether it threatened them. Nira met with all of them, played politics she'd never been trained for, made deals she wasn't sure she could keep, and slowly, painfully, carved out legitimacy. 4 months after taking the valley, she received another message. This one wasn't an invitation. It was a summons, formal, sealed with the mark of the Regional Council, a body of the most powerful alphas who met once a year to handle disputes too large for individual packs. They wanted to discuss her unauthorized territorial acquisition. Kira read it over Naira's shoulder. "It's a trap. Everything is a trap these days." "Then don't go." Nira folded the message. "If I don't go, they'll use it as justification to unite against us. Claim I'm a rogue threat that refuses to engage diplomatically, but if I go, they could kill you. They could try. The council met in an ancient hall carved into a mountainside, neutral ground that predated any living pack. Naira arrived with Kira and Jace as her escort, though she made them wait outside. Inside, 9 alphas sat in a semicircle. Riven was among them. Of course he was. The head of the council was an ancient wolf named Aldrich, gray-haired and sharp-eyed. Naira Vale, the Silver Wolf, you've caused quite a disruption. I've defended my people and claimed unclaimed territory. That's not disruption. That's survival. The valley you took was disputed between 2 packs. You had no right. Neither did they. Both Stonefang and Riverdale failed to hold it for years. I succeeded in weeks. Another alpha spoke, a severe woman named Thorn. You're not a pack. You have no legal standing under our laws. Then change your laws. Naira met each of their gazes in turn. Because I'm not going anywhere. The rogues you've ignored and exploited for generations aren't going anywhere. We've proven we can defend ourselves. We've proven we can take and hold territory. You can acknowledge that reality, or you can waste resources trying to suppress it. You speak boldly for someone who stands alone before 9 alphas, Riven said. His voice was cold. You have no leverage here. Naira smiled. Don't I? How many of you have actually fought in the last decade? How many have gone soft, relying on reputation and inherited power? I've spent 3 years fighting for every meal, every inch of ground. I've killed more wolves in single combat than most of you have faced in your entire lives. So when you talk about leverage, remember, I'm the one who's already proven I can beat your kind. The room went silent. Then Aldrich leaned forward. What do you want, Naira Vale? Recognition. Not as a pack, but as an independent territory. The valley and the surrounding wilderness. Right to self-governance without pack interference. Impossible, Thorn said. It would set a precedent. Every rogue group would demand the same. Good. Maybe they should. You're asking us to legitimize rebellion, Riven said. I'm asking you to acknowledge reality. The world is changing. Power structures that worked for centuries are breaking down. You can adapt or you can cling to the old ways until they destroy you. Aldrich studied her for a long moment. You realize what you're proposing would fundamentally alter the balance of power in this region. Yes. And you think you're strong enough to maintain that position? I know I am. Prove it. The words hung in the air. Naira's pulse quickened. What? You claim to be the equal of any alpha here. Prove it. Fight one of us in formal challenge. Win, and we'll grant your recognition. Lose. Aldrich smiled thinly. Lose, and you submit to pack law. Your territory becomes forfeit. Your people scatter. Naira's mind raced. This was the trap. This was always the trap. They'd maneuver her into a position where she had to fight someone she couldn't beat, then use her defeat to justify crushing everything she'd built. Who? She asked. Your choice, Aldrich said. Any alpha in this room. She looked at them, ran the calculations. Thorn was too experienced, Aldrich too canny. The others were unknowns. Her gaze landed on Riven. He stared back, expressionless. But she could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. The bond, broken, twisted, aching, pulsed between them. Him, Naira said. Riven's eyes widened fractionally. No. Why not? Afraid? This is insane, he said, looking at Aldrich. I rejected her. There's history. Then it should make for an interesting fight, Aldrich said. Unless you're declining, I'm sure one of the other alphas would be happy to. I'm not declining. Riven stood. Fine. Tomorrow. The traditional arena. To submission or death. Naira's stomach dropped. Death. She'd expected submission rules. Yield and it's over. But death? Agreed, she heard herself say. Riven's expression was unreadable. Agreed. Naira spent that night in a neutral cabin preparing. Kira tried to talk her out of it. Jace and Finn offered to help her escape. Mira just sat quietly in the corner, crying. I can beat him, Naira said. To them, to herself. He's an alpha, Kira said. Full-blooded, fully trained. You've gotten stronger, but I beat 2 alphas in the valley. That was different. You had the flare at full power and they weren't expecting it. Riven's seen what you can do. He'll have a strategy. So will I. But lying in the darkness that night, Naira wasn't so sure. Riven had rejected her when she was nothing. Now she was something, but was she enough? The arena was exactly what it sounded like. A natural depression in the mountainside, surrounded by stone seats carved into the rock. Hundreds of wolves filled those seats. Word had spread. Everyone wanted to see this. The rejected Omega versus the Alpha who'd cast her out. Naira stood in the center of the arena, feeling the weight of all those eyes. The morning sun was harsh, throwing sharp shadows across the stone. She wore simple clothes, no armor, no weapons. The flare was her only defense. Riven entered from the opposite side. He'd stripped to the waist, exposing a body built for combat, all muscle and scars. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who'd never lost a serious fight. Aldrich stood at the arena's edge. The challenge is formal. To submission or death. No outside interference. Begin when ready. Riven shifted immediately. A massive wolf, dark-furred and powerful, with those same storm-gray eyes. Naira stayed human, reached for the flare. It came sluggishly. She froze. Tried again. The warmth was there, the power responding, but slower than usual. Weaker. What? Riven attacked. He crossed the arena in seconds, faster than she'd expected. Naira threw up a shield at the last instant. His weight crashed into it, and the barrier held, barely. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. She poured more power into it. The shield solidified. Riven circled, looking for weaknesses. Naira's mind raced. Something was wrong. The flare should be stronger than this. She'd been using it almost daily for months, pushing it further each time. Why was it resisting now? Riven lunged again. This time he went low, under the shield. Jaws closed on her leg. Pain exploded. Naira screamed, collapsed to one knee. Blood poured from the wound. She fired a pulse point blank into Riven's face. He yelped and released her, backing off. She tried to stand. Her leg buckled. The wound was bad, deep, probably damaged muscle. In the stands, someone shouted. Others took up the cry. She couldn't make out the words through the ringing in her ears. Riven shifted back to human form. Blood ran from his nose where her pulse had connected, but he was smiling. Is this it? All that power and you're still just a broken Omega. The words hit harder than his bite had. Broken. She'd heard that word so many times. From pack members, from Riven himself, from the voice in her own head that never quite shut up. Broken wolf. Broken bond. Broken, useless, worthless. The flare exploded. Not the controlled burn she'd learned to manage, the raw, wild power from those first desperate days in the wilderness. It erupted from her in a shockwave that sent Riven tumbling backward, that cracked the stone beneath her feet, that turned the entire arena silver white. And in that moment, Naira understood. The power had never been weak. She'd been holding it back, controlling it so tightly, so carefully, that she'd strangled it, afraid of losing control, afraid of becoming the monster they'd always said she was. She let go. The flare roared through her like wildfire. The symbols on her skin blazed so bright they hurt to look at. Energy crackled in the air around her, visible, electric. Riven shifted back to wolf form and charged. Naira met him head-on. No shields, no defensive tactics. Just pure, overwhelming power. She caught him mid-leap, hands wrapped in energy, and slammed him into the ground hard enough to crater stone. He twisted, trying to break free. She didn't let him. Poured more power into her grip, felt bones creak under the pressure. Yield, she growled. He snapped at her face. Caught her cheek. Tore skin. Naira headbutted him. Once, twice. The third time his struggles weakened. Yield, she said again. Never. So she broke his front leg. The crack echoed through the arena. Riven howled, finally shifted back to human, cradling the mangled limb. Yield! Naira roared. Blood ran into Riven's eyes. He looked up at her, and for the first time she saw fear there. Real, genuine fear. I yield, he whispered. Silence. Absolute. Shocked. Then Aldrich's voice, dry and bemused. The challenge is concluded. Naira Vale is victorious. Nira stood over Riven's broken body, power still blazing through her, and realized with crystal clarity that she'd just changed everything. She'd beaten an alpha in formal combat, in front of hundreds of witnesses, under traditional law. They couldn't deny her anymore. She looked up at the council members, at Aldrich's calculating expression, at Thorn's barely concealed fury. "You wanted proof," Nira said. Her voice carried through the arena, amplified somehow by the flare. "There it is." Then she walked out, leaving Riven bleeding in the dirt, and didn't look back. Outside, Kira grabbed her arm. You were... I've never seen... I know." Naira's hands were shaking, the adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Get everyone ready to move. We leave tonight." "But you won. They have to..." "They don't have to do anything, and they will absolutely try to kill me before they honor that agreement. So we run while we still can." They made it 10 miles before the pursuit caught up. Not the council. Worse, Ironclaw warriors. 30 of them, maybe more, led by Koran, Riven's beta. They surrounded Naira's group in a narrow valley with cliffs on both sides. "You broke our alpha," Koran called out. His face was twisted with rage. "Humiliated him. Humiliated all of us." "He yielded," Naira shouted back. "Under formal challenge. This isn't about honor, it's about revenge." "You're right. It is." The attack came from all sides. Naira's group fought desperately. They were outnumbered but fierce, every one of them a survivor. Kira took down 3 warriors before one caught her from behind. Jace and Finn fought back-to-back, protecting the weaker members. Nira let the flare loose again, but this time it wasn't enough. There were too many attackers, too much chaos. She was exhausted from the arena fight, her legs still bleeding, and the power that had felt infinite hours ago now had limits. She saw Mira go down, saw Torv's throat torn out, saw wolves she'd trained and fought beside dying in the dirt. No, no. The flare didn't just rise, it detonated. Energy exploded outward in every direction, a nova of silver light that vaporized the first rank of attackers and sent the rest scrambling. Naira stood at the center of it, burning so bright she couldn't see, couldn't think, could only feel the raw power consuming everything. When it faded, she was alone. Her people had scattered or fallen. The Ironclaw warriors had retreated. The valley was silent except for the sound of her ragged breathing. And standing at the far end, having somehow survived the blast, was Koran. But he wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking behind her. Nira turned and saw Riven. He limped forward, left arm in a makeshift sling, face swollen from her beating, but his eyes were clear, focused. "Enough," he said. "Alpha," Koran protested. She needs to..." "I said enough." Riven stopped 20 feet from Naira. "Call off the warriors. This ends now." "But now," Koran reluctantly signaled. The surviving Ironclaw wolves melted back into the forest. Naira and Riven faced each other in the ruins of the battlefield. "Why?" she asked. Her voice was hoarse. "Because you were right. About all of it." He looked around at the bodies, the destruction. "This is what clinging to the old ways gets us. Death. Endless death. You rejected me. Called me worthless." "I know. And I was wrong." He met her eyes. "The moon doesn't make mistakes." "I did." Nira laughed. It sounded broken even to her own ears. 3 years too late." "I know that too." He took a step closer. She didn't retreat. "The bond. I can still feel it. Broken, but there. Can you?" She could. That aching, twisted thing that had never fully died. "What are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying maybe we could..." "No." The word was flat. Final. Riven flinched like she'd hit him. "You don't get to decide you were wrong and have everything go back to normal," Naira continued. "You destroyed me, threw me away, made me into this." She gestured at herself, at the still glowing symbols on her skin. "And now that I'm powerful, now that I'm dangerous, suddenly I'm worth something? That's not..." "Yes, it is. You want me now because I beat you, because I'm a threat, not because of who I am." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Riven nodded. "You're right. Again." He turned to leave. Stopped. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. For all of it. He walked away. Nira stood in the empty valley, surrounded by the dead, and realized she'd won. Everything she'd fought for, recognition, power, revenge. So why did it feel so hollow? Kira found her 3 hours later, sitting on a boulder at the valley's edge, staring at nothing. We lost 9, Kira said quietly. No preamble, just the facts. Torv, Mira, 6 others, 12 more wounded badly enough they can't travel. Mira, dead. The girl who'd looked at Naira like she hung the moon, who'd learned to survive because Naira taught her, who'd died because Naira hadn't been fast enough, strong enough, smart enough. It's my fault, Nira said. No, it's Corrin's fault, and Riven's for creating a culture where his beta thought revenge was the right response. Kira sat down beside her. You gave the order to retreat. You protected as many as you could. You can't save everyone. Why not? What's the point of all this power if I can't even protect my own people? Kira was quiet for a moment, then, because power isn't about protection. It's about choices. Before you, we had none. We lived or died based on pack whims, on whether they decided we were worth tolerating that day. Now we have choices. Territory, leverage, a voice. 9 dead is a tragedy. But how many hundreds of rogues are alive now because of what you built? Nira didn't answer. Couldn't. The logic was sound, but it felt wrong. Numbers on a ledger versus faces she'd known, voices she'd never hear again. They buried the dead that night. No ceremony. They didn't have time. Just wrapped the bodies and placed them in shallow graves marked with stones. Naira stood over Mira's grave longer than the others, remembering the scared girl who'd stumbled into her territory 4 years ago. I'm sorry, she whispered to the cold ground. I should have kept you safe. But the dead didn't answer, and the living needed her attention. By dawn, they were moving again, heading back toward Silver Valley, with their wounded, leaving the battlefield behind. No one spoke much. Exhaustion and grief made for heavy traveling companions. They were 2 days out when the messenger found them. Young Wolf, barely more than a kid, wearing neutral colors. He approached cautiously, hands visible and empty. Message for Naira Vale, he called out. Jace moved to intercept, but Naira waved him off. From who? The Council. Alpha Aldrich specifically. The messenger pulled a sealed letter from his pack. I was told to wait for a response. Nira broke the seal, read quickly. Her expression didn't change, but Kira, watching closely, saw her jaw tighten. What is it? Kira asked. The Council is honoring the challenge result. They're granting formal recognition to Silver Valley as independent territory. Nira looked up at the messenger. Why? What changed? The young wolf shifted uncomfortably. I'm not privy to council deliberations, but word is your fight with Alpha Riven impressed certain members, and the attempt on your life afterward by Ironclaw warriors violated several treaties. The council is using it as justification to censure the Ironclaw pack. Censure, Naira repeated. What does that actually mean? Trade restrictions? Territory limitations? They can't expand for 5 years, can't make new alliances without council approval. It's significant. Kira whistled low. They're neutering Ironclaw's power, making an example. Because I want to fight? Because you exposed a crack in the system, the messenger said, and cracks spread. Nira reread the letter. The formal language was dense, but the core message was clear. Silver Valley was recognized. Her authority over it was legitimate. The rogues who'd followed her had official standing now. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like a noose tightening. Tell Aldrich I accept the terms, she said, and tell him I know exactly what game he's playing. The messenger looked confused. Game? He's giving me just enough legitimacy to be useful, but not enough to be truly independent. I'm a tool now, something he can point at other packs and say, see what happens when you push too far. I'm the example he uses to keep everyone else in line. I'll relay your acceptance, the messenger stammered, and left quickly. Kira waited until he was gone. You're right. He is using you. I know. Question is, do we let him? Do we have a choice? Naira smiled without humor. There's always a choice. Question is whether we're willing to pay the price. They reached Silver Valley to find it transformed. Word of the council's recognition had already spread. New rogues had arrived, not just a few, but dozens. The valley that had held 100 wolves now strained under 200, and they all wanted something from her. Naira spent the next 3 days in endless meetings, territory disputes between rogue groups, resource allocation, training requests. Everyone had a problem and expected her to solve it. On day 4, she snapped. "Enough," she said, standing abruptly in the middle of yet another complaint about hunting rights. "I'm not your alpha. I'm not your leader. I gave you territory and protection. Figure out the rest yourselves." "But we need structure," someone protested. "Rules, hierarchy." "Then create them. Vote on them. I don't care. But stop expecting me to build a pack for you. That's not what this is." She walked out, leaving stunned silence behind. Kira caught up with her outside. "That could have gone better. Could have gone worse. I could have burned the whole camp down." "You're overwhelmed." "I'm tired," Naira corrected. "Tired of everyone wanting me to be something I'm not. The packs wanted me to be weak so they could ignore me. Now the rogues want me to be strong so they can hide behind me. Nobody just wants me to be me." "What do you want to be?" Naira looked out over the valley. At the fires burning, the shelters being built, the wolves who'd found safety here. "I don't know anymore. I started this for revenge, to prove Riven wrong, to make them all regret throwing me away. And I've done that. I beat him, humiliated him, got everything I said I wanted. But it didn't fix anything. The hole he left when he rejected the bond, it's still there. Bigger now, maybe, because I thought power would fill it, and it doesn't." Kira sat down on a fallen log, gestured for Naira to join her. "Can I tell you something? Can I stop you?" "No?" Kira smiled slightly. "I came to you 3 years ago because I wanted to learn how to survive. You taught me that. But you also taught me something else, that surviving isn't the same as living. You've been surviving so long you forgot how to do anything else." "What's your point?" "My point is, maybe revenge was never the goal. Maybe it was just the excuse. Something to focus on so you didn't have to deal with the real damage." Kira stood. "You want my advice? Stop running from what happened and actually process it. Grieve the bond. Grieve the life you could have had. Then decide what you actually want, not what you think you should want." She walked away, leaving Naira alone with thoughts she'd been avoiding for 3 years. That night, Naira did something she hadn't done since the rejection. She let herself remember Riven as he'd been in that first moment. Before the disgust, before the rejection. The split second when the bond had snapped into place and she'd felt complete for the first time in her life. She remembered what it felt like to have that ripped away. And she cried. Really cried, not the angry tears of the early days, but deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere so far down she'd forgotten it existed. When she was done, hours later, something had shifted. The hole was still there, but it felt different. Not gone, just acknowledged. She could work with that. The next morning, Naira called a general assembly. Every wolf in the valley attended, packing into the central clearing. "I've been doing this wrong," she announced. No preamble. "I've been making decisions alone because that's what alphas do. But I'm not an alpha, and this isn't a pack. So here's what's going to change." She outlined a new structure. A council of representatives voted on by the wolves themselves. Territory divided into zones, each self-governing but coordinating on defense and resources. Rules created democratically, enforced collectively. "I'll still fight when fighting's needed," she said. "I'll still defend this territory with everything I have, but I'm not running your lives anymore. You're free wolves. Act like it." The response was mixed. Some loved it. Others looked lost without clear hierarchy. But over the next week, the system started taking shape, and Naira found herself with time to actually think. She started training again. Not the desperate survival training of the early years, but focused practice. Pushing the flare to new limits. Exploring what it could do when she wasn't just reacting to threats. She discovered she could sense other wolves from miles away, could track their movements through some connection to the energy that permeated everything, could create constructs, shapes made of solidified light that lasted minutes instead of seconds. The symbols on her skin had spread further. They covered her entire torso now, wrapped around her back and down her legs. Beautiful and alien, marking her as something other than wolf. Jace found her practicing one afternoon, sending dozens of light constructs through an obstacle course she'd set up. "That's new," he said. "Been working on precision. Power's useless if you can't control it." "Is that what you were missing against Riven?" Control? Nira let the constructs dissolve. I was missing a lot of things against Riven. But yeah, control was part of it. I was so afraid of becoming a monster that I held back everything that made me dangerous. And now? Now I know being dangerous isn't the same as being monstrous. It's just a tool, like any other. Finn arrived, breathless. Nira, we've got a situation. She was moving before he finished the sentence. The situation turned out to be a pack delegation, not Ironclaw, Riverdale. Saren, the Alpha Nira had defeated in the battle for the Valley, stood at the border with 10 warriors. Nira approached cautiously, Kira and Jace flanking her. Alpha Saren, she said, neutral tone. What brings you to Silver Valley? Saren looked different than she had months ago. Older, somehow. Tired. I need your help. That brought Nira up short. Help with what? Ironclaw is making moves, subtle ones. They've been censured by the Council, but that just made them more desperate. They're trying to annex smaller packs through coercion, building power for when the restrictions lift. Saren's jaw tightened. They approached us 3 days ago, offered an alliance, them taking partial control of our territory in exchange for protection and resources. You said no. Of course I said no. We're not interested in being Ironclaw's puppet. But Riven made it clear that was the only acceptable answer. Refusal means conflict. So you came to me. You beat him in formal challenge. You've built something here that scares every pack in the region, and you have no love for Ironclaw. Saren met her eyes. I'm asking for an alliance. Mutual defense, Riverdale and Silver Valley against Ironclaw aggression. Kira spoke before Nira could. This could be a trap. It could be, Saren agreed, but it's not. I'm here in good faith because I'm out of options. Ironclaw is bigger, stronger, and desperate. They'll roll over us within a month if we stand alone. Nira considered. An alliance with a legitimate pack would give Silver Valley even more standing, would send a message that her territory wasn't just tolerated, it was integrated into regional politics. But it would also make her a clear enemy of Ironclaw. No more ambiguity, no more plausible deniability. Give me 3 days to discuss it with my council, Nira said. I'll have an answer then. Saren nodded. That's fair, but Nira, whatever you decide, decide fast. Riven isn't going to wait forever. The council, 9 wolves elected from different zones of the valley, met that evening. The debate was intense. This is exactly what we shouldn't do, argued a wolf named Petra. We've been fighting for independence from pack politics. Allying with Riverdale drags us right back in. We're already in it, Torv's replacement, a scarred female named Asha, countered. The council recognized us. That made us players whether we like it or not. Better to choose our allies than have them chosen for us. What does Ironclaw gain from antagonizing packs? Someone else asked. Kira had the answer. Desperation. They're censured, weakened, humiliated. Riven needs to rebuild power fast or risk losing control of his own pack. Absorbing smaller packs gives him resources and removes potential threats. So this is about Riven's ego, Jace said. We're being drawn into a conflict because he can't handle being beaten. Nira, who'd been quiet, finally spoke. No, this is about more than ego. Riven's trying to survive. He showed weakness. I made sure of that. And in pack culture, weakness is death. He has to prove he's still strong or someone will challenge him. Someone will take Ironclaw from him. And that matters to us why? Petra demanded. Because whoever replaces him might be worse. Better the enemy you fought than the one you don't know. Nira stood, paced the length of the room. But that's not why I'm considering this alliance. Then why? Because Saren came here herself. She could have sent an emissary, could have tried to negotiate through the council. Instead, she showed up at our border alone except for an honor guard and asked for help. That takes courage, and I respect courage. The vote was close. 5 for alliance, 4 against. Nira had the deciding vote as the Valley's founder. We ally with Riverdale, she said. Mutual defense only. We don't get involved in their other conflicts. They don't get involved in ours. And if Ironclaw comes for them, we stand together. 3 days later, the treaty was signed. Saren and Nira both cut their palms, mixed blood, and swore the oath before witnesses from both territories. You realize this means war, Saren said quietly as the ceremony ended. I realized that the moment I challenged Riven in the arena. This just makes it official. Any regrets? Nira thought about Mira's grave, about Torv and the others who died in the valley ambush, about 3 years of fighting and surviving and clawing her way up from nothing. Yeah, she said, plenty, but I'd do it all again anyway. Ironclaw's response came 2 weeks later. Raiders hit a Riverdale border settlement at dawn. 15 wolves, moving fast and brutal. They burned buildings, killed 5 wolves, and vanished before reinforcements arrived. The message was clear. Alliance with Silver Valley wouldn't protect you. Saren sent word immediately. We need to respond. Show them we're serious. Nira agreed, but she wasn't interested in responding. She was interested in ending this. She spent 3 days planning with her best tacticians, Kira, Jace, Asha, and a former pack warrior named Dren who'd defected to the valley months ago. They mapped Ironclaw territory, identified key positions, analyzed patrol patterns. We can't match them in numbers, Dren said. Ironclaw still has over 500 wolves. Even with Riverdale's support, we're outnumbered 3-1. Trust. Then we don't fight their strength. We fight their weakness. Nira tapped the map. Ironclaw's territory is huge. Too huge for effective defense after the Council censure. They've had to pull back from outer positions, concentrate forces at the core. That leaves gaps. You want to raid them? Kira asked. I want to bleed them. Quick strikes, hit and run. Target their supply lines, their resource caches, their training grounds. Nothing they can bring their full force against, but enough to make them paranoid. Force them to spread out their defenses. That could take months. Good. The longer this draws out, the more their internal tensions build. Riven's already under pressure. This will make it worse. They started the campaign the next week. Small teams, never more than 5 wolves, hitting Ironclaw positions at random intervals. A supply cache burned here. A patrol ambushed there. A training ground disrupted right before dawn exercises. None of the raids were lethal. Nira gave strict orders to avoid unnecessary killing. The goal was disruption, not massacre. Ironclaw responded predictably. They reinforced the hit positions, increased patrols, spread their forces thinner, trying to protect everything, which left the core vulnerable. 6 weeks into the campaign, Nira received intelligence from an unexpected source, a message from someone inside Ironclaw. Anonymous, passed through 3 intermediaries, but the information was solid. Riven was facing internal challenges. 2 of his senior warriors questioned his leadership openly. The censure and the raids had created fractures in pack unity. And Alara, his chosen mate, his Luna, was sick. Some kind of wasting illness that had started during her pregnancy and never fully resolved. She was bedridden, weak, unable to perform her duties. Nira read the intelligence report 3 times, looking for the trap. Found none. Either it was legitimate or someone was playing a very sophisticated game. What are you thinking? Kira asked, reading over her shoulder. I'm thinking Ironclaw is more vulnerable than they've been in a decade. And I'm thinking we could end this whole conflict with one decisive move. What kind of move? Nira looked up, eyes bright. Riven challenged me once, in that hall, in front of everyone, rejected me, humiliated me, cast me out. Yeah, so I think it's time I returned the favor. The challenge was delivered formally. Nira sent an emissary to Ironclaw's borders with a sealed letter addressed to Riven personally. It read, I, Nira Vale, Alpha of Silver Valley, challenge you, Riven Kale, Alpha of Ironclaw, to single combat for leadership of your pack. Meet me at the neutral ground where we last fought, 7 days from now. Come alone or come with your entire pack, I don't care. But come, or be branded a coward before every wolf in the region. The response came back within hours. Accepted. This is insane, Saren said when she heard. You can't challenge for leadership of a pack you don't belong to. There's precedent, Dren argued. Ancient law. If an alpha is deemed unfit, any wolf of sufficient strength can challenge. It hasn't been invoked in generations, but it's technically legal. Technically legal and suicidal are not mutually exclusive, Saren shot back. Nira, even if you beat him, and that's not guaranteed, his pack won't accept you. You are banished. You're a rogue. They'll tear you apart. Then I'll tear back, Nira said calmly. But I don't think it'll come to that. Why not? Because I'm not challenging him to take his pack. I'm challenging him to destroy it. Silence. Explain, Kira said slowly. Ironclaw's power is built on tradition, on hierarchy, on the idea that alphas are chosen by strength and the moon and everything is natural and right. Naira smiled. I'm going to prove that's a lie. I'm going to beat Riven again, decisively this time. And when his pack sees their alpha broken by a rejected Omega, when they see the wolf he threw away standing over him victorious, every belief they hold will crack. And then what, Jace asked? You just walk away and let them collapse? No. I offer them a choice. Join Silver Valley's system, democratic, free, no forced hierarchy, or stay with Ironclaw and watch it slowly tear itself apart from internal conflict. Naira's smile widened. Either way, I win. Either way, the pack structure that allowed my rejection in the first place gets weaker. You're not just going for revenge anymore, Saren said quietly. You're going for revolution. I'm going for change. Revenge is just a nice bonus. The 7 days passed in a blur of preparation. Naira trained harder than ever, pushing the flare to its absolute limits. She fought Kira, Jace, Asha, and Dren simultaneously, holding her own against all four. She practiced precision strikes until she could target specific points from 100 yards away, and she thought about what she'd say when she stood over Riven's broken body for the second time. The day of the challenge, dawn broke cold and clear. Naira arrived at the neutral ground with her council and 50 warriors. Not because she expected a fight, because she wanted witnesses. Riven arrived with twice that number. He looked worse than he had at the council arena. Thinner, older, the weight of leadership grinding him down. They met in the center of the field, just the two of them. You don't have to do this, Riven said quietly. I know what you're doing, trying to break me, break my pack. But it won't work. My wolves are loyal. Are they? Naira looked past him at the assembled Ironclaw warriors. Or are they just afraid to show disloyalty? There's a difference. You can't understand what it means to lead a pack. You're right, I can't. Because I don't believe in the system that creates packs in the first place. I believe in wolves choosing their own paths, not having them dictated by strength and tradition. That's chaos. No, that's freedom. Riven's jaw tightened. Last chance. Walk away. Take your valley, your rogues, your ideals, and leave us alone. Naira raised her hands. The flare ignited, brighter than it had ever been. No. The fight was shorter than expected. Riven was still strong, still skilled, but he was also injured from their last encounter, exhausted from weeks of internal pack conflict, and fighting an opponent who had grown exponentially stronger. Naira didn't toy with him, didn't draw it out. She just systematically dismantled his defense, broke through his attacks, and put him on the ground in under 3 minutes. When it was over, she had him pinned, energy blade at his throat, her knee on his chest. Yield, she said. Kill me, Riven rasped. If you're going to destroy everything I built, at least give me the dignity of dying for it. No, I want you to live. I want you to see what comes next. Naira looked up at the assembled Ironclaw wolves, raised her voice. Your alpha is defeated. By law, by tradition, I could claim leadership of your pack right now. Silence. Tense. Waiting. But I don't want to lead you. I want to free you. She released Riven, stepped back. You've been told your whole lives that strength determines worth. That alphas rule because they're superior. But look at your alpha now. Beaten by a wolf he called worthless. What does that say about the system? You're still stronger, someone called out. That means you're just the new alpha. No. I'm just proof of that strength isn't destiny. I was an Omega, the weakest rank. I should have died in the wilderness. Instead, I survived, learned, grew. Not because I was special, but because I refused to accept what I was told I had to be. Naira turned in a slow circle, meeting as many eyes as she could. You can too. Leave Ironclaw, join Silver Valley. Or don't, go your own way, start something new. But stop believing the lie that you have to submit to whoever's strongest. And if we stay? Riven asked from the ground. His voice was broken. What then? Then you stay. I won't force you. But know this, the raids continue. The pressure continues. And every day your wolves will see that there's another way. Eventually, they'll choose it. She walked away, leaving Riven in the dirt for the second time. But this time, 23 Ironclaw wolves followed her. By the end of the week, that number had grown to 78. Ironclaw didn't collapse, but it cracked. visibly, undeniably, and every pack in the region saw it happen. Nira stood in Silver Valley, watching wolves from 6 different packs arrive to see this place that had broken Ironclaw's power, watching them ask questions about the council system, the democratic structure, the freedom to choose. "You did it," Kira said, coming to stand beside her. "You actually changed things. Maybe. Or maybe I just started a process that'll take decades to finish." Nira smiled. "Either way, Riven was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "I'm not nothing. I never was. And soon, every wolf who was ever thrown away, ever called worthless, ever told they didn't matter, they'll know it too." The defections didn't stop. By the end of the month, Ironclaw had lost nearly 150 wolves. Some came to Silver Valley. Others scattered to smaller packs or struck out on their own. Each departure weakened Riven's position, validated Nira's message. But it was the council's response that changed everything. Aldrich himself arrived at Silver Valley's border on a cold morning in late autumn, accompanied by only 2 advisors. No warriors, no show of force, just an old alpha who looked tired. Nira met him at the edge of her territory, Kira and Jace flanking her out of habit more than necessity. "Alpha Aldrich," she said. Neutral, careful. "Just Aldrich is fine. I think we're past formalities." He looked around the valley, taking in the organized camps, the training grounds, the central hall they'd built over the summer. "You've done well here. Better than anyone expected." "Is that why you came? To compliment my construction skills?" "No. I came because what you're building is spreading. 5 packs have approached the council in the last 3 weeks asking about alternative governance structures. 2 have already implemented representative councils similar to yours. The entire regional power balance is shifting. And you're here to tell me to stop." Aldrich smiled slightly. "I'm here to tell you that you've won." That brought Nira up short. "What?" "You set out to prove the traditional pack system was flawed. You've done that. Ironclaw is fracturing. Other packs are reconsidering their structures. Even the most conservative alphas are being forced to adapt or face losing wolves to territories that offer more freedom." He paused. "You've started a revolution, Nira Vale. The question is what you do with it. I'm not trying to overthrow the council. I know. You're trying to make it irrelevant, which is arguably more dangerous." Aldrich's expression turned serious. "But I didn't come to threaten you or demand you stop. I came to offer you a position. A position. On the council, as a full member with voting rights and territorial authority equal to any alpha in the region." Nira stared at him. "You're offering me a seat at the table I've been fighting against?" "I'm offering you a chance to change that table from the inside. You've proven you can build something new, proven you can lead wolves who choose to follow you rather than submit to you. That's valuable. That's what the council needs if it's going to survive the changes you've set in motion. And if I refuse, then you continue as you are, independent, outside the system, forcing change through pressure and example. It'll work, eventually. But it'll take longer, be bloodier. More wolves will die while the old guard fights to maintain power they're already losing." Kira spoke up before Nira could respond. "This is a trap. He's trying to domesticate her, bring her into the system where she can be controlled." "It's not a trap," Aldrich said. "It's pragmatism. I'm old. I've been leading the council for 20 years and I'm tired of fighting battles that don't need to be fought. Nira's changes are coming whether we like it or not. I'd rather guide that transition than get crushed under it." Nira looked at him, really looked at him, saw the exhaustion, the calculation, the genuine resignation of someone who understood their time was ending. "I need to think about it," she said. "Take all the time you need, but Nira?" Aldrich met her eyes. "Whatever you decide, you've already changed everything. That matters." He left without waiting for a response. For 3 days, Nira wrestled with the decision. The arguments raged in her head, played out in council meetings, consumed every conversation. "It's exactly what you've been working toward," Asha argued. "Real power, real influence. You could reshape the entire regional governance from inside the council. Or she could get swallowed by it," Jace countered, "become just another alpha playing politics instead of actually changing things." "She'd have a vote," Dren pointed out. "That's more than any rogue has ever had." "It's also a leash," Kira said quietly. "The moment she accepts, she's bound by council rules, council decisions. She becomes part of the system." Nira listened to all of it. Then she went for a walk alone, following the trails she'd carved through the valley over the past 3 years. Trails she'd walked as a broken, rejected Omega with nothing but rage and survival instinct. Trails she'd defended against raiders, pack incursions, and her own despair. She ended up at Mira's grave. Someone had planted flowers there, small purple ones that grew wild in the valley. Nira knelt beside the marker, traced the carved letters of the girl's name. "I don't know what to do," she said to the silence. "I fought so hard to be outside the system, but maybe being outside isn't enough anymore. Maybe I need to be inside to really burn it down and rebuild it properly." The dead didn't answer, but sitting there in the fading light, Nira felt something settle inside her, a clarity she hadn't had in weeks. She knew what she had to do. The next morning, she sent word to Aldrich. She would accept the council position, but on her terms. The terms were simple but radical. Silver Valley would maintain complete autonomy over internal governance. Naira would attend council meetings and vote on regional issues, but she would not be bound by decisions that contradicted her territory's democratic structure. And most importantly, the council would formally recognize the right of wolves to leave packs without being hunted or banished. Aldrich accepted without argument. 3 other council members resigned in protest. The remaining 5 voted to approve Nira's appointment. She became the first non-alpha council member in recorded history. The ceremony was held in the mountain hall where she'd fought Riven months before. Every major pack sent representatives. Naira wore simple clothes, no ceremonial robes, no symbols of rank, just herself. When Aldrich asked her to swear the traditional oath of service to the council, she refused. "I'll swear to serve the wolves of this region," she said clearly. "All wolves, not just pack members, not just the strong or the well-connected. Every wolf who's been cast aside, thrown away, told they don't matter. That's who I serve." The hall erupted in argument. Half the alphas demanded she be removed immediately for refusing the oath. The other half, younger, more pragmatic, argued that forcing the oath would only prove her point about the system being broken. Aldrich let them argue for 10 minutes. Then he raised his hand for silence. "The oath is accepted," he said, "in spirit if not exact wording. Naira Vale is confirmed as a council member with all rights and responsibilities thereof." The vote was razor thin, 5 in favor, 4 opposed. But it was enough. Naira took her seat at the council table, the same table she'd walked away from in defiance months ago, and felt the weight of what she'd just done settle on her shoulders. She'd become part of the system she hated. But maybe that was how you destroyed a system. Not from the outside throwing rocks, but from the inside planting seeds. The first real test came 2 weeks later. A small pack called Thornridge appealed to the council. Their alpha had died unexpectedly, and tradition said the strongest warrior would challenge for leadership. But the pack's strongest warrior was a woman named Sarah, who didn't want the position. She wanted to implement a council system like Silver Valley's. The conservative alphas argued this violated tradition. Leadership must pass through strength challenge. That was law. "It's a law that no longer serves its purpose," Naira countered. "If the pack's strongest doesn't want to lead, forcing them creates a weak alpha. Better to let them choose their own structure." "And if every pack decides to abandon traditional leadership," Alpha Thorn demanded, "what happens to order, to stability?" "Then maybe we discover that order and stability don't require dominance hierarchies," Nira said. "Maybe we discover that wolves can govern themselves without alphas at all." The argument raged for hours. In the end, the vote split 4-4. As the newest member, Naira had been asked to abstain from her first few votes to avoid exactly this situation. She voted anyway, in favor of Thornridge's right to choose their own governance. The motion passed. Thorn stormed out. 2 other conservative alphas followed, but Thornridge implemented their council system, and it worked. Within 3 months, they were more stable and prosperous than they'd been under their previous alpha. Word spread. More packs started questioning traditional structures. Not all of them, change was slow, and many alphas held on to power with bloody claws. But enough. Enough that the landscape was shifting in ways that couldn't be reversed, and through it all, Naira walked the line between revolutionary and politician, never quite comfortable in either role, but effective in both. 6 months after joining the council, she received an unexpected visitor. Riven stood at Silver Valley's border, alone, looking diminished. He'd lost weight, gained new scars, and his eyes held a defeat that went deeper than any physical wound. Nira met him at the boundary line. Didn't invite him in. Didn't need to. "I'm stepping down," he said without preamble, "as Alpha of Ironclaw." She'd expected this eventually. Ironclaw had lost too many wolves, too much territory. The pack was a shadow of its former power. Who's taking over? No one. The pack voted to dissolve. Some are joining other territories. Some are coming here if you'll have them. The rest are striking out on their own. Nira processed this. Ironclaw, one of the oldest, most powerful packs in the region, was simply ending. What about you? I don't know. I spent my whole life being groomed to be alpha, learning to lead through strength and tradition, and it was all built on a lie. He looked at her with something like wonder. You were right about everything. The system is broken. It creates leaders who rule through fear instead of earning loyalty. It throws away wolves who don't fit the mold instead of valuing them for what they are. Realizing you were wrong doesn't undo the damage you caused. I know, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking, he faltered. I don't know what I'm asking for, maybe just to say I'm sorry. For the rejection, for the cruelty, for not seeing what was right in front of me. The bond, that broken, twisted thing, pulsed weakly. Still there. Always would be, probably. I don't forgive you, Nira said. Not cruel, just honest. What you did broke something in me that never fully healed. But I understand why you did it. The system taught you I was worthless. You believed it because you were raised in it, shaped by it. Does understanding make it better? No, but it makes it explicable. Human. You weren't a monster, just a wolf trapped in a monstrous system. She paused. What will you do now? I thought I might travel. See what other wolves have built outside the traditional structures. Learn how to be something other than an alpha. He smiled sadly. Maybe learn how to be just Riven instead of Riven Kale, leader of Ironclaw. That's probably wise. He turned to go, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, of what you've built. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and used it to change the world. That takes strength I never had. You're wrong, Nira said. You have that strength. You just spent your whole life being taught not to use it, but you're learning now. That counts for something. Riven nodded once, then walked away. Nira watched him go and felt something inside her finally, truly, let go. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just release. The need for revenge, for validation, for him to see what he'd thrown away, it evaporated. She didn't need him to understand her worth anymore. She knew it herself. 3 years after joining the council, Nira stood before the largest gathering of wolves the region had ever seen. It wasn't a council meeting. It was something new, a general assembly. Representatives from every pack and independent territory meeting to discuss a proposal that would fundamentally reshape how wolves governed themselves. The Regional Compact, they were calling it. A framework that preserved pack autonomy while establishing basic rights for all wolves. Freedom of movement, right to leave packs without persecution, democratic representation in governance, and protection from abuse by those in power. It had taken 3 years to draft. 3 years of arguments, compromises, setbacks, and small victories. 3 years of Nira fighting tooth and nail for every clause while being called radical, dangerous, destructive by conservatives who clung to the old ways. But she'd built coalitions, found allies in unexpected places, proven through Silver Valley's success that alternative systems could work. And now, standing before 1,000 wolves, she made her final argument. I was an Omega, she said. Her voice carried through the hall, enhanced somehow by the flare even though she wasn't consciously activating it. The lowest rank, worth nothing, according to the system. When my fated mate rejected me, I was cast out to die. And I should have died. By every measure of the old ways, I was too weak to survive. She raised her hands. Let the flare ignite, not aggressively, just present, the symbols glowing silver across her skin. But I didn't die. I survived. I learned. I grew. I found strength not through dominating others, but through refusing to be dominated. And I'm not unique. Every wolf here has potential that the old system suppressed. Potential we unlock by choosing freedom over hierarchy. The compact isn't perfect. It won't solve every problem, but it establishes that wolves have inherent worth regardless of rank or strength. It says we deserve choice, dignity, the right to forge our own paths. She looked out over the assembled crowd, saw Kira and Jace and Asha, saw former pack members and lifetime rogues, saw young wolves who'd never known the old system and old wolves who'd suffered under it. I'm asking you to vote for change, not because the old ways were entirely wrong, they served their purpose once, but because we've outgrown them, because we can be better. The vote took 3 hours to tally. Every representative voting publicly, their choice recorded for history. When the final count came in, the hall fell silent. 743 in favor, 216 opposed. The regional compact passed. That night, after the celebrations and the angry protests, and the 1,000 conversations about what came next, Naira found herself alone on a hillside overlooking Silver Valley. The territory had grown. What started as a desperate claim on disputed land now sprawled across 3 valleys, home to over 800 wolves. They'd built real structures, halls and homes and training grounds, created schools where young wolves learned not just to fight, but to think, established trade routes with a dozen packs. It was more than she'd ever imagined when she'd first stumbled into the wilderness, broken and bleeding. "You did it," Kira said, climbing the hill to join her. "Actually changed the entire region." "We did it," Nira corrected. "This was never just me." "Don't be modest. It doesn't suit you." Kira sat down beside her. "But seriously, how does it feel? You spent years fighting for this moment. Now that it's here, it feels incomplete," Naira admitted. "Because the compact is just the beginning. Implementation will take decades. There will be resistance, probably violence. Conservative packs won't give up power easily. So the fight continues. The fight always continues. That's what I've learned. There's no final victory, no moment where everything is fixed and you get to rest. Just constant work, constant push towards something better." "Sounds exhausting." "It is," Nira smiled, "but it's also worth it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Kira asked the question she'd been avoiding for months. "Do you ever regret it? Any of it? The rejection? All of it? The pain, the fighting, the years in the wilderness. If you could go back and change it, if Riven had accepted the bond instead of rejecting you, would you?" Naira thought about it. Really thought about it. Imagined a life where the bond had held, where she'd become Ironclaw's Luna, spent her days managing pack politics and bearing Riven's children and living within the very system she'd spent years dismantling. "No," she said, "I wouldn't change it. Because that version of me would never have discovered what I'm capable of, would never have built this. The rejection broke me, but it also freed me. Let me become something more than what I was supposed to be. Even with all the wolves you lost, Mira and Torv and the others, even with that, their deaths mattered. They mattered. And the world we're building, they're part of it. Their sacrifice wasn't meaningless." Kira nodded slowly. "You've changed, since those early days. You're less angry now." "I'm not less angry. I've just learned to channel it into something constructive instead of just burning everything down." "Is there a difference?" "Yeah, there is." Naira looked out over the valley, at the lights beginning to glow in windows as evening settled. "Rage is easy, it's fuel, but it's also finite. It burns hot and fast and eventually consumes itself. But purpose is sustainable. You can run on purpose for years, decades, however long it takes. And your purpose is? Making sure no wolf ever feels as worthless as I did in that hall. Making sure strength doesn't determine worth. Making sure the system serves wolves instead of wolves serving the system." She paused. "It's not revenge anymore. Maybe it never really was. What is it then?" Nira considered. "Justice, maybe. Or just caring. Caring enough about wolves I'll never meet to fight for their right to choose their own lives." They watched the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. Eventually, Kira stood. "Council meeting tomorrow, early. Thorn's going to challenge the compact's enforcement mechanisms." "Of course she is. She's been fighting this for 3 years. Will you be ready?" "I'm always ready," Nira smiled. "That's the benefit of spending 3 years learning to survive impossible situations. Council politics barely registers as dangerous anymore." Kira laughed and headed back down the hill. Nira stayed a while longer, alone with her thoughts. The bond was still there. Probably always would be, that faint echo of what might have been. But it didn't hurt anymore, didn't define her. It was just another scar, no different from the physical ones she'd accumulated over years of fighting. And the flare, that strange power that had saved her life countless times, had become as natural as breathing. The symbols covered most of her body now, visible even when the power wasn't active. They marked her as other, as different, as something that shouldn't exist according to traditional wolf understanding. She'd stopped caring about that too. Let them call her a freak, a monster, an abomination. She knew what she was, a wolf who refused to accept limitations, who'd clawed her way from nothing to reshape the entire regional power structure. A wolf who'd been rejected and cast out and left to die. A wolf who survived. 5 years after her rejection, Naira returned to the place where it had all begun. The Grand Hall stood unchanged. Same stone walls, same torches, same aisle down which she'd walked, heart pounding, believing the bond would save her. She walked it again now. But this time she wasn't alone. Kira and Jace flanked her. Behind them came 50 wolves from Silver Valley, all wearing the valley's symbol, a silver circle broken in one place, representing both her broken bond and the breaking of traditional structures. The hall was packed, every seat filled, standing room only. They'd come from across the region to witness this, the former Omega returning to the place of her rejection as a council member with full authority. At the front, Aldrich waited. The old Alpha was frailer now, leaning on a cane, but his eyes were still sharp. "Naira Vale," he said formally, "you come before this assembly with a proposal." "Shartet." "I do." Naira's voice was steady, strong. "I propose that this hall, the Grand Hall of the Northern Territory, be designated as neutral ground open to all wolves, not just pack members, not just those with status or rank, everyone." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Furthermore," she continued, "I propose that we establish here a permanent assembly, representatives from every pack and independent territory meeting quarterly to discuss regional issues and vote on matters of common concern. A true democracy of wolves." "That would supersede council authority," Thorne said from her seat. She was older now, too, grayer, but no less fierce. "You're proposing to dismantle the very body you're part of. I'm proposing to evolve it. The council served its purpose, but we've outgrown the model of a few powerful alphas making decisions for everyone. It's time for something better." "And if we refuse?" another alpha asked. "Then I'll build it anyway, somewhere else, with the wolves who believe in it. But I'd rather build it here, in the place where I was rejected. Turn this hall from a symbol of exclusion into a symbol of inclusion." Naira met Thorne's glare directly. "You've fought me every step, but even you can see where this is heading. Change is coming, whether we manage it or get swept away by it." The vote wasn't even close. 16 packs in favor, 3 opposed, 7 abstentions. The Grand Hall became neutral ground. The assembly was established, and the council, in its traditional form, was dissolved. Aldrich stepped down from his position with visible relief. "I'm too old for this new world," he said to Naira afterward, "but I'm glad to see it arriving. Glad I lived long enough to watch you tear down what took centuries to build." "I didn't tear it down," Naira corrected. "I just showed that it was already falling. All I did was guide where the pieces landed." Modest as ever, he smiled. "What will you do now? You're the most influential wolf in the region, whether you hold a formal title or not." "The same thing I've been doing. Fighting for wolves who can't fight for themselves. Building systems that serve instead of dominate. Living." She paused. "Actually living, not just surviving." "Good." Aldrich squeezed her shoulder. "That Omega who walked into this hall 5 years ago, she deserved better than she got. I'm glad she found a way to take it." He walked away, leaving Naira alone in the hall. She stood in the spot where Riven had rejected her, where her world had ended and begun simultaneously. The bond's scar pulsed once, faint, then faded. Naira closed her eyes and let herself remember the girl she'd been, desperate for acceptance, believing her worth came from someone else's validation, broken by a rejection she'd thought would destroy her. That girl was gone, dead and buried alongside Mira and Torv and all the others who'd fallen in the years of fighting. In her place stood something new, something forged in wilderness and blood and impossible choices. Not an Omega, not an Alpha either, just Naira, complete, whole, powerful in ways that had nothing to do with rank or hierarchy or anyone else's opinion. She opened her eyes and walked out of the hall. Walked toward the future she'd built with clawed hands and stubborn refusal to accept the limitations others imposed. Behind her, the shadows of the past remained. The rejection, the pain, the years of struggle. But ahead was Silver Valley. Was wolves building new lives free from forced hierarchies? Was change spreading through a region that had been stagnant for generations? Was proof that being thrown away, being rejected, being told you were nothing, none of it determined who you became? Only you did that. And Naira Vale, the rejected Omega who became the most feared leader the territory had ever known, had chosen to become something greater than anyone ever imagined, not despite her rejection, because of it. The sun set over the mountains as Naira headed home, and she was smiling.